after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Moving the Goalposts. I'm Nick DiMartino.
I'm Liam Barwick.
All right, so there's a lot to get to. First, I just want to say you can follow us on social media at Nick. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Liam at Liam MTGP. You can follow this show at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at ETB Network. You can follow you can follow the Empty the Bench Network on all the Empty the Bench and getting all the Empty the Bench Network podcasts on YouTube at youtube.com/ETB Network. You can find us at etbpodcast.com, and you could listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, we are presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for the Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. We just did a couple of streams of the last few days. I was on the one on Tuesday for the two playing games, the Lakers and Pelicans and the Warriors and Kings. And of course, we're going to be talking a bit about our the whole play-in tournament thing. Play-in tournament thing, weird way to put it. All right, so first of all, we do have to talk a little bit about how the Knicks stumbled into the 2 seed. It didn't feel possible. You even said on a previous show that they blew the 3 seed, and they did even better than that. So I will say, I am not one who advocates for losing on purpose. I am not saying that at all. I don't advocate tanking. I mean, I do advocate tanking, but this is not tanking. I'm not saying they should have lost on purpose. However, I do think that this very likely could have been the kiss of death to the Knicks. I think getting the 2 seed could certainly have hurt them in the long run, because if they had the 3 seed, they would have to play Indiana as opposed to them playing the Sixers. Look, like I said, I am not one to say get cute and lose a game on purpose or something like that. So you have to play, you have an easier first round matchup, although it is impossible because, that would set a ridiculously dumb precedent, for sports teams. But I don't think any reasonable person can deny that getting the 2 seed very easily can cause the Knicks to go into some type of buzzsaw with the 76ers. It is just a fact that they're more likely to lose to the Sixers than they are to lose to the Pacers. I don't know. That's why it felt good that they were good enough to get the 2 seed, but I wasn't really celebrating it.
That's a terrible take. They should have. First of all, they didn't stumble into the 2 seed. They won 5 in a row.
Okay, no, what I mean by stumbled, I mean as in like, okay, fair enough. They didn't stumble into the 2 seed. All right, but it wasn't very likely that was going to happen.
Secondly, I don't know. I agree that the Knicks have a tough matchup against Philly, and I actually think that Philly is going to win the series. But I wouldn't have felt confident going up against Indiana either. I mean, the Knicks did beat Philadelphia 3 out of 4 times this season. They won both games in Philadelphia. I think that you had to win the game. There's a couple of things. First of all, I would rather go up against. I would probably rather go up against this Sixers team, especially the one that we watched on Thursday, or on Tuesday. I mean, you have to remember, Indiana also has one of the best guards in the league right now in Halliburton, who the Knicks could have drafted, which would be even worse to lose to somebody that you could have had. And also, I think that the Sixers right now are a good team, obviously. I do think that they are going to win the series, but you have a lot of uncertainty still around Embiid. I didn't think that he looked – I don't even know if he looked 50%, 60% of himself on Tuesday. He's a massive injury risk. And if he's taken out of the game, which he was in the first half against Miami, then the Knicks would have a great chance to win the series. And I think Indiana Indiana finished ahead of the Sixers. I know that obviously the Sixers had injury problems, but Indiana's had a good season. They went to the final of the play-in tournament. They're not, a pushover team. So I don't. And then also the other thing is, if you win the first series, it's a big difference for the Knicks, at least, having the first 2 games be in New York versus having the first 2 games be in Milwaukee. If it came down to that. So I think that this year is going to be a very wide open playoff year. And I don't think that there was really any scenario where you would have felt comfortable if you were the Knicks. I don't think that if the Knicks had lost, I still don't think we would feel comfortable going against Indiana.
Right. That this is all true. Look, it's the playoffs. You're never comfortable. It's very hard to be comfortable in the playoffs. Even if you're the Celtics, the 1 seed, you're very uncomfortable, actually.
Because not so much now, but yeah.
Not so much now, but because, I mean, the East is not really good enough to have 10 teams have the chance to go to the playoffs, or 8, you know what I mean? 10 teams, including the play-in. Like, the East is just such a weak, is just a weak conference. But you're right. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I'm not saying Nick should have lost on purpose. I think some people probably have said that. That would have been a bad idea, because once you get to that area, it's like, okay, well, losing on purpose would obviously get you. I mean, teams never lose on purpose, really. But if that were to happen, like, you would also be creating like a bad situation for yourself down the line. And by the way, if the Sixers are so good that you would lose on purpose to avoid playing them in the first round, well, you're probably going to play them eventually. So you might as well just play them at some point. I mean, now I do think that playing the Sixers right now might be worse than playing them in the next round, because the Sixers right now are very hot. I mean, people are like, look, if I'm a Sixer fan, I'll say this. If I'm a Sixer fan, I'm concerned that Embiid is maybe at 50%. In fact, I'm kind of convinced that if this was still the regular season, Embiid would probably not be playing. It's just that when you're a big man, there's a few things. There's a few reasons Embiid's playing. First of all, it's the playoffs and they really need him. Second of all, when you're a big man like Embiid, you can get away with playing injured a little more. Like centers and power forwards often play when they're a little injured, and they can get away with it a little more than say point guards can. Like if Brunson was injured in the same way Embiid is, he probably would not be playing. But the flip side is that like, and a lot of people seem to be confident with the Knicks because Embiid is not 100%. The flip side is the Sixers are actually a pretty hot team right now. They're still on a 9-game winning streak, and that includes beating Miami twice and Oklahoma City. It's not like this. I get that they're not 100%, but they're still winning these games. Like, I don't think the Knicks can really just feel and should feel comfortable with this. I mean, look, as a Knicks fan, I am not comfortable, even though the Knicks are favored in the first game at the Garden. But another thing is that I'm concerned about is Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be guarding Embiid. I mean, that's I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, that I think could be a big problem for the Knicks when Isaiah Hartenstein is guarding Embiid. So I think that's going to be a big problem. Now, the Knicks Sixer fans are probably saying similar things about us. They're probably saying like it's going to be tough to beat the Knicks in the Garden. Embiid's not fully healthy, but even if Embiid's not fully healthy, I still think he can win games for them.
Well, but he has to finish the series too. He's also a guy that could get injured at any moment. But let's also not forget the last 2 times the Knicks have made the playoffs. We said in 2021 that the matchup that was most favorable to the Knicks, the matchup that we wanted was Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
And then also last year, I think a lot of people thought that the Knicks were going to be in trouble going up against Cleveland. So I think that I think that if the mentality was we don't want to win because we don't want to play Philly in the first round, then the Knicks wouldn't have the 2 seed and they probably wouldn't even be a playoff team because that mentality is not what they're about. They have a mentality that they will beat anybody. So, and you have to have a mentality that you could beat anybody in order to win the title. So I don't think there's teams that are ducking anybody and that are going to be competitive for the title anyway. But I think also you could have said Philly might have wanted Milwaukee over the Knicks. I mean, Milwaukee are a team that are not well coached, that are bad defensively. So this could, is also not the ideal matchup for the Sixers either. And I think that it's also, going to be tough for teams to go into the Garden and win as well. I think that we saw that with Cleveland last year. But so, yeah, I think I actually do think the Sixers are going to win, but I think that the Knicks might have lost to Indiana as well. I don't think that there was a massive difference in winning or losing the game. And I think you want to play to win. And with everything that went on, it looked for a couple weeks ago, it looked like they would fall out into the out of the playoffs entirely and play in the play-in. And so to have rebounded like this, and again, the Knicks are a tough physical team, and I think when you have a star of your team as a big guy who's not close to 100%, I think that being a tough physical team is going to be an advantage that they will have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I totally agree. I don't. Yeah, like I said, losing games on purpose when it's not like you're tanking when you want to get a higher draft pick and nothing else counts. This would be like, oh, we get the 3 seed and we wouldn't get home court for the first 2 games. Like we wouldn't get home court against the Bucks if it comes to that. It's like home court could actually be. It's not always like this, but home court could be the deciding factor of the series. There are many times when a series is kind of back and forth, but the team that really gets the edge is the team that has home court game 7, and it really could get to that. So it certainly could lead to a situation where the Knicks would end up regretting it.
And would you rather go in that sense though? Also, would you rather play your road games in Indiana or in Philadelphia right now? The Knicks, I think you'd rather play in Philadelphia. The Knicks are going to have a lot of fans in the building.
You would rather play? I mean, look, I've never been to either stadium. I can probably imagine the Sixers are a tougher place to play. Is that not true?
Yeah. But the Knicks are going to have a lot of fans in the building. Would you
True.
not agree with that?
It is driving distance from New York.
Correct.
Look, no disrespect to Pacer fans. I don't know how good of a fan base they are.
Well, but yeah,
How
so
tough it is to play there.
I agree. But then also, I mean, again, like you look at last year, Milwaukee had the best record in the NBA, and the Heat were the play-in team, and they beat them in 5. I mean, so I don't think that we can go in with a predetermined assumption of who's a better team. I mean, nobody would have thought that
Right.
that the Heat would have gotten there last year, right? So, and they had to play Milwaukee, and they had to play Boston. So
Yeah.
I think that if you look at it as we don't want to play this team, I don't think you're going to be able to win because you can't play scared.
No, I totally agree. You can't play scared, and you have to have the mentality of we can beat anybody that's put in front of us. I mean, the mentality of a basketball of any team or individual who's competing in, like, say, an individual sport is I have to think I can beat anybody, and you also have to believe that you're not invincible. You have to believe both those things simultaneously. You kind of have to be level-headed and be kind of in the middle. Just like how the Celtics can't have the mentality that, we won 63 games this year, or 62 games, whatever it was. Therefore, nobody else can beat us. First of all, it is objectively true that in basketball, the higher seeds are not necessarily the better teams in the playoffs. The NBA season is not the best indicator necessarily of who the better teams are overall.
Mhm.
Especially now with the whole load management thing, and uh, some players superstars often getting injured in the regular season, and just the way teams are built. It is just obviously true that there is no like the better regular season team, the better record team, that there's a linear sort of correlation between that and who the better team is uh
Right.
come the playoffs. And some teams just have better playoff DNA compared to the regular season. Miami is a pretty good example of that. And like you said, 3 years ago, nobody would have thought the Hawks were going to be as good as they were, and the Knicks were no match for them at all. If anybody can remember, I mean, like, the Knicks were no match for Atlanta that year, and they
Mhm.
ended up going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and nobody could have expected that. And you also look at a team like the Lakers last year; they were a playing team, and they made it to the Western Conference Finals. So, yeah, all of that is obviously true. None of this is a foregone conclusion, and this seems to be true in basketball more than most other sports. I mean, it's like that a little bit in all professional sports, but in basketball, it seems like any of these teams, especially in the West, can go on
Mhm.
a run. The Lakers were a playing team, and I know they're not playing Oklahoma City, but if they did play Oklahoma City in the first round, there's a good chance the Lakers would be. I could be wrong, but there's a good chance the Lakers might even be favored in that matchup. So we like, it's not. None of this is a given. And also, uh, going back, like the whole regular season versus postseason thing. I remember the Hawks one year in 2014. The Hawks
Mhm.
were by far the best regular season team. They were the 1 seed, and they were really bad in the playoffs. They beat the Nets in 6 games. They didn't look good. They beat the Wizards only because John Wall got hurt, and then they lost to the Cavs. Like, so, sometimes teams that are good in the regular season, they don't always. They sometimes do have a lot to prove come the postseason, which is why I would be a little bit worried if I was a Celtics fan. Um, because even though the Celtics improved greatly, you also have to remember the fact that the Celtics don't have much to gain come the playoffs. They don't have much to gain. I feel like they have a very high disappointment potential come the playoffs. Because imagine if they lose in the first or second round. Like, you think Celtics fans are just going to accept that as okay after you win 62 games? Like, there's no way that's going to fly. Like, it is basically at least make it to the finals or bust for the Celtics. Maybe if they lose in the finals, it's not a huge deal. But, the Celtics are a team that they just don't have good playoff DNA like recently. And, they're like the opposite of Miami. Their best players frequently.
No, they went to the finals. They to be fair though, they've been to the finals, and they went to Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and then Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
I agree. I don't disagree that they're not a good team. What I'm saying is that they often freeze up in big spots. I mean,
but you're saying they freeze up in big spots. They've made 2 playoff runs in a row, though.
I get that. I'm not saying they're not good enough to make a playoff run, but it's like what I'm saying is in these big spots in these series, they often don't play well in these series. I mean, the Celtics, 2 years ago against Golden State, they had a pretty bad series. Tatum was terrible. Like that's always a big potential. And I think a lot of these teams could possibly beat the Celtics. I'm not saying I expect it to happen, but you just don't know what might happen come playoff time.
Right.
So I don't know if you saw this. Now, I don't normally care about things like this, but Donte DiVincenzo is ineligible for any NBA awards. He can't win Most Improved Player because by only a matter of seconds, he missed the requirement. Now, like I said before, I don't care about awards in sports in general. I don't care about who wins Most Improved Player. I don't even really care about who wins MVP. I certainly don't care about who wins Coach of the Year. I've seen coaches win Coach of the Year that never should have won, like Terry Collins, Buck Showalter winning Manager of the Year. Of course, I made this about the Mets. So the reason I just want to bring this up is that here's the thing. When you look at these awards, it's like, I don't think there should be qualifiers for them. I don't think you should have to win you should have to play X number of games to win MVP or X number of, minutes to win Most Improved Player. It's like there is, to me, seems like a natural process of like choosing who wins these awards. Only one person can win it, and they win it for a reason. It doesn't make any sense. Like you can't, in other words, choosing who wins it is more of an art than it is a science. It is an art, not a science. It is based on the judgment of the voters. It's not like it's a technicality where it's like, sort of like how in football you have to kick the ball 10 yards for an onside kick. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, players would kick it 3 yards and every team would recover. It's not like that with NBA awards. It's not like players are incentivized to not play games without these, to win these awards without these qualifiers. And I think that a player that plays fewer games can sometimes prove that they're, for instance, MVP over a player that plays more games. I don't think there should be these qualifiers. I think that it just in general for these awards, it doesn't make any sense. It would be like if in college football they said, okay, in order for a quarterback to win the Heisman, you have to throw X number of yards. Like that's essentially what it would be like. Or if you're, a running back, you have to rush for X number of yards, or you have to do this if you're in this position. Like it wouldn't, like if they did that in football, like it wouldn't make any sense to say you have to do at least like it's an attendance requirement in high school or something. Like, right. And Donte DiVincenzo probably would win Most Improved Player. And in my view, he probably is. But just because of a matter of seconds, and I don't know where they come up with these arbitrary qualifiers, requirements, because like they seem sort of random. But it's like I don't get this logic at all. And I also think that the NBA sometimes gets Adam Silver is like, you often praise the NBA for being innovative, and they are innovative, but there is such thing as too innovative. Sometimes they go too far with it and they want to get very cute with everything. And I don't know. I just hate this.
Well, I think I agree that the matter of seconds is insane. I think that the um, idea behind the requirements is to sort of help curb load management and stuff like that. But I do agree that the number of games, I mean, shouldn't really matter. I mean, Embiid should be in the MVP conversation this year, even though he didn't play a high chunk of the season. But none of him not playing a high chunk of the season is not his fault.
Right.
You know, he was injured. He wasn't load management or anything. And if he had played the requirement, he'd be in the conversation. So he should be in the conversation now. I mean, so I agree. I don't care about awards. I mean, they do matter, and they do matter, especially in terms of contracts. You know, there's a lot of stuff in a contract
True.
where you
Well, they don't matter to me or you.
right. They don't really matter at all. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has a lot of MVPs, but he would probably trade all of them for one Super Bowl, right? So
yeah,
it doesn't
or some ayahuasca.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean it doesn't really mean that much. And the other thing is it's a subjective award. Like, for instance, the most valuable player, like LeBron could honestly win it every year because if he left his team, they would be horrific. So he's the most valuable player to his team. So it depends how you look at it. And I think that the person who won like the Cy Young last year didn't even make the playoffs. So I agree that these awards are stupid. I don't care about them. And there's only one, piece of hardware that matters in each league, and that's the trophy at the end, and that's it.
Yeah. Now I will say, I know the logic is to prevent quote unquote load management. I think I don't just disagree with the notion that it would prevent load management to any meaningful degree. I don't even think it's remotely reasonable that it would prevent load management to much of a degree. I think players care about, load management is a thing for a reason. Like, look, I am not necessarily the biggest fan of load management, but most of the people who complain about load management couldn't look you in the face and tell you they care that much about random regular season games. Now, I am not one who says it doesn't matter at all when players rest their starters. I remember one year Greg Popovich rested Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, and I don't remember, a whole bunch of his starters. And I think that could be a problem when that happens out of nowhere because fans are paying to see those star players. And when you just rest them out of nowhere for reasons that don't have to do with illness or an injury, that is obviously a problem for when fans are paying to see those players. And if you're a nationally televised game, they're nationally televised because of the expectation that they're going to be playing. So I do agree that in basketball, load management could be a major issue. In football, it wouldn't be much of an issue because it's just a different type of sport. But in basketball, it could be an issue. But the flip side is they're not doing it for no reason.
Right.
They do. Load management is a thing for a good reason. They're not doing it because of the fun of it. And it's not because the NBA is just soft. That is not true. It is because players get injured frequently now. It is a lot on their bodies when they to play 82 games. And it's like, look, and a lot of times with these teams, like it doesn't matter that much the regular season because anybody can go on a run. And it's just, if it's all about winning championships, which everybody would probably agree with, except maybe James Harden or something like that, that if it's all about winning championships, if you're doing the best you can to put yourself in the position to win a championship, how can you get mad at that? I mean, I find it hard to actually get mad at players for doing that because obviously that's kind of what they have to do. And load management really has very little to do with this because there aren't that many players that are in the conversation for an MVP. And if players have a choice between winning a finals and winning the NBA finals and winning an MVP, very few of them would choose the MVP, especially if you've won a bunch before. Now, you were talking about the MVP. It's like, the MVP is more of, it's not really the literal MVP in really any sport. In my view, in baseball, it is very hard to actually decide an MVP. Is there ever a literal MVP? No, there never really is. Is there in football? Is there an MVP? Well, at least 90% of the time, if you were to take the term for its literal meaning, it would be a quarterback who wins the MVP.
Right.
Like a defensive lineman winning the MVP. Nobody can seriously argue that the defensive lineman is the most valuable player, or a corner the most valuable player. Nobody in their right mind who understands football would believe that. I mean, but the flip side is, you have to understand professional sports is a business, and these are largely business decisions in a sense. It is, in some ways, I think these awards are popularity contests. I mean, LeBron could have won MVP every year for a decade straight,
Right.
if you took the term MVP literally. Kobe won an MVP one year. He probably was not the literal MVP that year, but he didn't win any, and they kind of wanted to give him one. That's the truth. That's just how it is with these awards. I mean, it's just, I mean, if you think about it, there are some times when finals MVPs or Super Bowl MVPs might be even be on the losing team, the literal MVP.
Right.
But they never do. They would never give it to a player. I don't know if they've ever done that, given it to a player in the losing team. I mean, LeBron in the 2015 finals, nobody who follows sports would tell you with a straight face that LeBron wasn't the literal MVP. He was, but he was on the losing team. They gave it to Iguodala for guarding him, literally for guarding him, and giving up. Like, LeBron scored almost like he was unbelievable. It was more impressive than some of his finals wins. That finals loss. And I think he scored like 36. I think his stats were like 36, 13, and 9 or something like that. And Iguodala, who guarded him, got all the credit for holding him to that. It's like, that's like, nobody in their right mind would argue Iguodala was a literal MVP. It's just like that with these awards. It's kind of popularity contests and things like that, which is part of the reason why I think these qualifiers are so silly in a sense, because that's really what they are. They have all of these weird requirements for popularity contests.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just agree. I think that they're subjective, and I don't really care about them. I don't think that majority of the fan bases care about them.
I think that there's a size. I kind of agree, although it's not particularly uncommon for basketball fans to be fans of players in a sense, as opposed to just teams. That's fairly common, it seems like. Okay. I mean, by the way, if you're a fan of a team like we are, like we're fans of the Knicks, and for a long time the Knicks have been bad. I mean, it is hard to watch playoff. It is hard to watch sports without some type of rooting interest, whether it's your team or betting or something like that. Like, I often root for. I don't know about you. I usually root for matchups that I want to see the most. So I typically root for LeBron in the playoffs when, my team's not in it. That's just usually how I view it. I don't know. That's just me, my rooting interest as a fan, but whatever. I don't know how much of this play-in tournament you watched. So the Lakers and so the Warriors lose to the Kings. I was a bit disappointed. Klay Thompson went 0 for 10. His contract is up this year. He's extremely washed, as they put it. I don't know. Do you think he has a chance of re-signing with Golden State?
If they restructured the deal, he would have to make a lot less money. I mean, he did have a really good end to the season besides that game. But I think that he would be better suited to come to. I would actually take him on the Knicks. I think he would be better suited to come to a team like that, where the Warriors are at the end of their road, and they've done, they've rewarded those players for that, and they've paid them a lot of money. And those players are at the end of their road. I mean, Clay has not been the same player since his surgery a few years back, but I still think that he would be a really valuable addition to a Lakers, a Knicks, Milwaukee, Miami. But I don't think that he's right for where Golden State is in their process right now. I just think that he could serve. He to me, he would serve sort of the same role that Ray Allen served on the Heat when they won the title.
If you were on the Knicks, you mean?
Or any team that's championship contending.
Right.
As a guy who's not nearly as good as he was in his prime, but he's still a good player who can shoot and can really add to the team. I mean, I think that he had a bad night, but I think that the difference between a big man and a guard in terms of getting older is they're both going to decrease a lot of play, but the guys who can shoot, they're always going to have a couple of those nights. Klay Thompson will have a night where he scores 40 something next year. And so I think that I could see him going back to Golden State if they pay him a lot less money, but I think that he would do a lot more service to a team that's in the championship contention next year and is maybe a piece or two away depth-wise from a championship.
Right. No, I totally agree. Look, Klay Thompson will get signed by somebody. He reminds me a little bit of Russell Wilson in the sense that he is going to have to settle for a lot less money than he was making before. But somebody's definitely going to take him. But the thing is, I totally agree. He is basically right now, he's basically, I would say, more of a role player. And anybody, like you said, anybody who can shoot you can't really age out of the ability to shoot threes. Mm-hmm. That's not something you age out of. Yep. You can age out of athleticism, but you can't really age out of certain abilities in basketball. Like one of them being 3-point shooting, another one being having a high IQ or being able to get a lot of assists or whatever. Right. You don't age out of that ability. And also, I think the issue with Klay Thompson is he's a role player. Well, there's two issues. One, he's a role player and didn't do anything in that role in the play-in game, and play-in games are kind of important. And it's like a DH. If it's like in baseball, if your DH goes 0 for 3, it's like you're literally a designated hitter and you're going 0 for 3. It's also the fact that he's paid on average, his contract this year, he was paid $43 million a year. It's like even if he did everything he was supposed to do, paying that much money for a role player, even if he did what he was supposed to do, like the minimum expectations, that is just too much money to most teams, especially when all you end up doing is losing in the play-in game. It is just way too much money that they're spending on him. And like you said, he just hasn't been the same since he had his surgery. That being said, I agree. I would want him on the Knicks. I think he'd probably be an even better fit on the Lakers. I think he'd be a better fit on the Lakers even than the Knicks. But sure, I'd take him on the Knicks. And they wouldn't have to overpay for him necessarily if he goes to neither team would necessarily have to overpay for him. I haven't looked at either team's cap room exactly. But I think it's over. I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel for the Warriors dynasty. It's just that none of their star players had a good enough game. Look, they were a great dynasty while it lasted, but it's just sort of over now.
Right.
Of course, the Lakers win. The Lakers also, they beat the Pelicans. The Pelicans, I mean, the thing is, Zion had no help that game. We actually did a live stream on this show, on this podcast, for both those games actually. But yeah, we live streamed I was on it, the Lakers, Pelicans,
Mhm.
and the Warriors Kings. And Zion was a monster. He put up 40 points, but none of his teammates did anything. It reminded me a little bit of the Purdue UConn game. I mean, I think the Lakers could have played better. I got worried at the very end. I took them money line, actually. They were slight underdogs. Anthony Davis could have played a little better, I think. But he's also kind of hurt. But he was able to get 15 rebounds, and that's kind of underrated for a big man. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this was another game where they had I thought, an atrocious take on Get Up, which was that the Lakers should have sat LeBron.
Yeah, Greenberg said that.
And not played him, which this, this falls into what we talked about with the Knicks, which is that it's ridiculous for pro athletes to think that pro athletes would be scared to play another team. I think that it was really a shame what happened to Zion. The Pelicans, I think, would have won the game if he had finished it, honestly. The way the game was going. It's over for the Pelicans now. You would agree?
Yeah, because I feel he's the only player who did anything useful. Like, without Zion, they looked like, here's the thing, without Zion that game, other than Zion, they were not a play-in team even. They were well below average without Zion.
And you have to realize, like, the Lakers, this is completely different also than the Knicks scenario, because the Knicks are talking about 2 or 3, where if the Lakers had lost to the Pelicans, they would put themselves in a do-or-die situation, win or go home, which you never want to be in a one-off situation with your season on the line. So it would have been dumb to purposely lose.
Right. It would have been even dumber for them to purposely lose than for the Knicks to purposely.
Correct. And also, I know that Denver swept them last year, but I don't think that Denver is, jumping for joy that they're playing against Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And Anthony Davis is inconsistent as hell, but when he has games where when he's on in a game, he can completely take over the game. And so while I think Denver will win easily like they did last year, I don't think that Denver is that joyed that they're playing the Lakers either. I mean, they've got 2 guys on the team that can take over the entire game. Denver has 1 guy on the team who can take over the entire game.
Right.
And Denver's a better team overall, but I don't think, in basketball, you could have 4 scrubs and 1 amazing player playing against 5 all-stars, and the amazing player could still win the game. So I think that was a ridiculous take that the Lakers should have lost, especially because they would put themselves into a one-off game with the Kings, who are a pretty good team, honestly. I wouldn't want to play the Kings in a game 7 scenario, no matter. But I think that the Lakers were smart to obviously play for the win there, but
it's just common sense.
Right. I still think that Denver is going to blow them out, but I think that the Lakers are, like you said, like, nobody thought they were going to go where they went last year, and they can be a very dangerous team in the playoffs because of a couple of the personnel that they have.
Yeah. It's unbelievable when people say those things, because they never actually try to put themselves in the position of, I don't know how much, I'm sure Mike Greenberg has played sports in his life growing up, or maybe even coached his kids' teams or played softball or whatever. I don't think he would ever advocate that for one of his own teams or his own kids' teams, let alone a professional team. Like, it just doesn't make sense because you would never advocate. Like, I can't imagine a parent, like a coach of their kids' team in any sport, saying, we don't want to play this team, so I think we should lose on purpose so we get the easier matchup. You would never do that in your own recreational sports, kids' sports, let alone professional sports. Also, if that's the case, well, you're going to play like, if the Nuggets are so good that you're willing to lose on purpose and play a game and potentially lose a playoff spot in a one-time game where you might not even be the favorite, at the very most, maybe a slight favorite. If that's the case, you're going to play them eventually anyway.
Right.
Like if the Nuggets really are that good, well, what makes you think they're going to lose in the first round and you're not going to have to play them again anyway? What like that to me is just so silly. If you think that they're going to okay, let me get this straight. You think that the Nuggets are so good that you're going to lose on purpose to not play them, but also think that they're going to lose to the Pelicans in the first round and you're not going to have to play them? Like, it just doesn't logically make any sense. Look, none of this is a foregone conclusion. It's why we play the games. The better teams don't always win.
Right. I mean,
it's just a matter of probability.
I mean, obviously nobody wants this to happen, but they could tip the ball off and Jokic falls awkwardly and is out for the series on the first play. I mean, you don't know ever what's going to happen. Yeah. So I think that you really just have to play every game, go for the win every game and, let the chips fall where they may, honestly.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to go out and see if you could beat Denver. Why can't they, Denver's great, but they haven't had obviously it's tough, but they haven't had as good a year as they did last year. So, maybe the Lakers will play them a little tougher this year, and why not? I mean, nobody expected Oklahoma City to get the 1 seed. And I think it's also a lot of disrespect to Oklahoma City. Well, I agree they're not the greatest 1 seed, but, just to say, oh, we're going to lose and then play OKC. And then it also gives you, if that were to have happened, like if they had sat LeBron, I mean, the bulletin board material that it would have given Oklahoma City is endless.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't say, well, he played to lose here. I mean, do you want to go up against SGA and Chet really as well? Like that's a prize. I don't know. I don't think so.
It's not like they have to play the Pistons in the first round. They're playing a team that is slightly worse than the Nuggets. It's not like, which I don't think anybody would disagree that it's going to be harder to beat the Nuggets than to beat Oklahoma City, but you don't lose on purpose in sports to get an easier matchup, especially when you're probably going to have to play that tougher matchup anyway.
Well, and you have to realize also Anthony Davis said that the Lakers have been thinking about the Nuggets for a year since he said that in October, since the Nuggets eliminated them. So this is also possibly the matchup the Lakers wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that knocked them out last year, and you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. They swept you last year, took away a chance to win a championship. And LeBron strikes me as not a guy who's going to allow himself to be swept back-to-back by the same team. And so I think that, that's a discount as well. The Lakers might have actually been looking at, we want Denver, give us Denver. We have unfinished business with Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I just think it is just silly when sports commentators try to not ever not look at things rationally from the perspective of a competitor, especially when if you talk about sports for a living. Like I said, you probably are a competitor yourself on some level. Obviously they're not going to look at it that way. It's just obviously so silly. Now, I don't know. Are you a fan of the play-in tournament?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good, actually.
I think so too. It's one thing that I think the NBA does very well is the play-in tournament.
I mean, the game, a couple of the Laker Pelican game and the Sixer Heat game were great games.
Yeah,
and it does a couple of things. It makes the regular season more important. More teams have a chance to make it at the end. It gives you a lot of more meaningful regular season games at the end.
Yeah.
And then it gives you something you want to avoid. You want to get that top 6. If you were a team that was playing in the top 8 and you had a 5-game lead on, the 8 seed, then you wouldn't really have to play those last few games. But if you want to get into top 6, so I think, yeah, I like it. And there's been a lot of really good matchups over the years that it started, like that Grizzlies versus Warriors series that time. And again, and it's not like the play-in, it's not like the play-in in the NCAA tournament where like the team is probably going to lose the next round. I mean, the Heat went to the finals. The Lakers went to the conference finals last year from the play-in.
Right.
So I like it. I think anything can happen in these, one-off games, especially the 9 versus 10, or when you get to that second game, for the 8 seed. I mean, that's, you get a few game 7s as well. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Well, you were saying that it gives teams something that they want to avoid. It also gives teams that are further down something they want something that they actually want,
Right.
which would be the play-in tournament. Like,
I mean, if
it goes
the
both ways.
Nets, if that didn't exist, the Nets season would have been over in like December.
Yeah.
But they actually had a couple of, chances late into March, to make the play-in. And yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's certainly true. Now, net fans are in even more pain than they were before.
Well, not really, because they don't exist. But yeah.
Well, no, there are some, they're the little brother team, but there are some. So I do want to talk about this a little bit since we're both fans of sports betting. Jontay Porter, who's actually Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, is banned from the NBA for betting against himself. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Interestingly enough, coincidentally enough, this story came out around the same time the Ohtani controversy was happening with his interpreter, and we can talk about that a little bit too. That story obviously got far more coverage than this one, even though from a gambling, sports integrity perspective, this is a far bigger scandal than the Ohtani thing, because, we don't really know everything that happened with Ohtani. There's no proof Ohtani was even betting, let alone betting on baseball, let alone his own team and betting unders on himself. Obviously, I think that this had to happen, obviously. Jontay Porter should be banned. I don't know if you had any other reactions to this.
I thought that it was a little bit much. I mean, they're so ingrained now that, like, I think the first person that had the story that he was banned was Shams, and Shams works for FanDuel. So I think that it's so ingrained now that I think that I thought that it was a little bit harsh. I probably would have thought maybe a couple of years suspension, maybe a year or whatever. But I think that I agree that this was a bigger story because it's more akin to insider trading in the other real life world. I thought that there was a possibility that he also could have faced criminal charges at some point, and maybe he still
by the way,
will.
to be fair, there's a good chance that he will.
Yeah, there's it's still possible that he will. So yeah, I think that this was a situation in which the NBA wanted. Well, I thought it was harsh. I think this was a situation where the NBA wanted to make an example out of somebody early.
Yeah,
and I think that is what prompted this ban. I thought that it wasn't something unexpected. I thought going in that was going to be the ruling, especially if they have found out, through investigation that this was done intentionally and with information in mind. I mean that it is definitely possible. I mean, Tim Donaghy faced criminal charges. Tim Donaghy went to prison. And so I could see that happening here, but I wasn't shocked. I mean, I didn't think it was, the most appropriate. I thought maybe a couple of years, but I wasn't shocked in the slightest.
Yeah. Well, nobody was shocked, obviously. I think that it is. I think he won. I don't know. How much did he make? $20,000 off of it? He ruined his whole career for like
Right.
$20,000. Um, I don't know. This wasn't done with a. This betting was legal. Like it was on an app, right?
Yeah, but
I could be wrong
well,
about that. I think it was on an app.
the bet itself, I guess, was done legally, but the situation surrounding it, it could become illegal.
Right. No, exactly my point. So a lot of people uh are making this about sports betting. First of all, or sports betting being legal. It is not about sports betting itself any more than like drunk driving is about alcohol. I mean, it has something to do with it, obviously, but it's people doing it in a way that is illegal, where the problem is the individual, not about sports betting itself. Like drunk driving isn't really about drinking alcohol per se. It's about drunk driving. This is the same thing. Now, a lot of people are kind of talking about how this is a problem with legalized sports betting. I don't agree. That is not true exactly. Um, One part of it is that, yes, I mean, I don't know exactly what the sports betting laws are in Canada, but I can imagine they're similar to what they are around here. Um, it is true that maybe it was easier for him to do this um, with sports betting being legal. However, the flip side is he probably wouldn't have been caught if this was all underground. If this had been with, say, a bookie, there's a good chance we never find out about this, and he could be doing this for years. We don't know. I mean, this could have been a whole thing that he did that he could have ended up doing for a long period of time had this been completely underground. And for all we know, things like this have happened in the past. I would bet that it probably has at least once or twice when sports betting was still illegal. So it's an issue. Like this is an issue whether or not sports betting is legal or not, because just like anything else that's illegal, it's still going to exist. It's just whether the question is whether it exists legally or illegally. So I think that's always going to be some type of issue. As far as them banning him for life, I don't think they had any other choice but to ban him for life, because this is always how it's been treated in professional sports and players betting on their own games, especially betting against themselves, where he literally this was the worst thing that could have happened. It was the worst thing that could have happened for the integrity of for the integrity of the NBA. They were just lucky that it was overshadowed by the Ohtani thing and that Jontay Porter nobody even heard of before this story. It was the worst thing that could have happened, because not only he wasn't only betting on his own sport. I mean, there's levels of this. You can't, like in the NFL, you can't bet in an NFL facility. You can't bet on your own sport. This was not just him betting on his own sport, not even betting on his own team or betting on his own games, betting against himself. And he literally took himself out of games where he bet the under on himself. Like this is like Black Sox level. Well, not Black Sox level because it wasn't a whole bunch of players. But the point is that, the only thing that would have made this worse would have been if a whole bunch of players did it. And every professional sport, whenever something like this has happened, they've been banned for life every single time that something like this has happened. So it was obviously predictable. It's also just like, what made him think he wasn't going to get caught? You know how easy it is to get caught if you're using an app? It's like Calvin Ridley did it and he was caught. What makes you think you're not going to get caught if you're a professional athlete betting on your own sport, let alone your own game?
Right. And I mean, Calvin Ridley was not betting on, like, in this situation either. And
No. But the point is, he was betting on football.
Right. But yeah, I agree that it was naive and it was a joke to throw away your career for that little payday compared to what you're making in the NBA. And yeah, I just think it was stupidity all around.
Yeah. It was just the dumbest thing. Look, if you're a professional athlete, the dumbest thing you can do is bet on your own sport. It has to be the dumbest thing you can do, because you're probably not going to get away with it. And even if you're smart about it, you're still on, like, it's not worth it. It is not worth like hiding from something like
Right.
that for an extended period of time, even if you think you can get away with it.
Right.
Because eventually the walls always close in. And if you're doing it underground, if your bookie like beats the crap out of you, you can't go to the police for protection.
Right.
It would be like going to the cops and saying they stole my drugs.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
it's just it's honestly just a no-win situation. Speaking of sports betting, I saw Mizuhara, Ipe Mizuhara, who was Otani's interpreter, he's actually getting criminally prosecuted. He was charged with bank fraud and stealing $16 million. I don't know if
Wow.
you saw that.
Yeah, I didn't, but yeah, I mean that makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, we were talking about this. You were saying that you didn't think I still don't really don't know if I believe that he stole $16 million, but
Yeah,
if he stole all the money.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to hear the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that it was at least hard to believe that somebody didn't know how much money was missing from their account, that much money, somebody that they had been close with through all these years. I just found it hard to believe that they didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, or even like I'm sure Otani hires a lot of people that handle a lot of his finances. You think that person wouldn't have noticed because his
Right.
interpreter doesn't handle his finances. He's not like an accountant or anything like
Right.
that. Like,
Right.
so you would think somebody would notice. And when it's your job to notice something, to handle somebody's finances, you would notice something like that. Just as if it was your own bank account. So I don't know. This whole thing was a little weird. My issue was, look, even if Otani turns out to be a degenerate gambler, which none of us know if that's true or not, clearly his interpreter probably is. But even if that is true, as long as he's not betting on baseball exactly, which people were like, Pete Rose was saying, well, if only I had an interpreter. First of all, Pete Rose, sit down. All right. I've been an advocate of Pete Rose getting into the Hall of Fame, but don't talk if your name is Pete Rose. There was no information. There was no indication or real evidence that he was betting on baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It becomes a way less interesting story, I would say, to me, than if he's not betting on baseball.
Yeah.
Because I disagree that athletes should have. It's so stupid that athletes can't bet on other sports.
They can, though.
Well, not according to that. No, they can't.
No, they can. They can bet on other sports. They just can't bet on their own sport. I think the way it works, I could be wrong about this, but I think, like, if you're a baseball player, you can bet on football, but you can't bet. I think the rule is that you can't bet on sports like in a facility is how it works.
Right.
But you can still bet on sports that you're not involved in.
On the premises.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Gotcha.
Which obviously, like, if I mean, when I worked at the MLB, I mean, people sometimes, like, a lot of people were downplaying the Calvin Ridley thing. I don't see many people doing it with Jontay Porter, but the Calvin Ridley thing, like, people were downplaying it like it's not a big deal because he didn't bet on his own team or anything like that. It's like, look, when I worked at the MLB, I was not allowed to bet on baseball, and I wasn't a player, not even close.
Right.
Like, NFL employees cannot bet on the NFL. People who work at the NFL network cannot bet on the NFL, let alone an actual player. So you have to understand, leagues have to go down hard on this because of the issues that it causes.
Right.
And now I will say, like I said, going to the whole gambling being legal thing, this was probably a bigger issue when gambling was illegal because there were more scandals like this, like when the mafia was a bigger thing. Like this was more likely to be an issue in like the 50s and 60s, and there were many more cases of guys throwing games when gambling was illegal.
Correct.
Because the mafia ran it. Like, I'd rather DraftKings and FanDuel run like sports betting than the mafia.
I agree.
So I don't know. There's a few things I want to get to. You see this reporter being a real creep with Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
Greg Doyle is his name. I've never heard of him. I don't know why he thinks that's a good idea. It must be really creepy in private life if he feels comfortable doing that, not only at a work environment, but when he's on camera.
Well, so he said that he said that Caitlin Clark going like this to her. I guess he gave her the thing, the question that why did she give this thing to, and she said, "Oh, I do it to my family," and he said, "Oh, do it to me, and we'll get along just great." He also had a tweet from July 8th, 2010, where he said, I guess he wrote a column about LeBron. And he said, just realized my LeBron column references masturbation, gangbangs, and oral sex. Damn, I'm twisted.
Well, so he's right about that last part.
I mean, he's right about that last part. It seemed from a lot that he was hated, that he's hated. He wrote a column that said, Caitlin Clark, I'm so sorry. Today I was part of the problem, which is, I kind of hate that even more than anything else. That he wrote a whole column about it. Like he was so weird. And then I guess wrote an article like sort of pointing more attention to himself. It was so weird. But I mean, it's, you know, the one thing is that we've never seen the WNBA in the news constantly like it has been this last week.
Yeah. No, that's true. Obviously, you know what? Something like this could have happened before, but maybe we wouldn't have known about it because women's basketball has just never been a story. I will say though, the only women's sport that really has been very popular before for a long time is in women's tennis. I don't remember anything like this happening with women's in women's tennis. I don't. It just to me goes to show a lot about somebody if they're willing to say things like that publicly at a work environment, knowing there's cameras everywhere. One more story I want to get to. I don't know if you saw John Sterling retired.
I did not.
The Yankees announcer, you didn't see that? So he's retiring. He retired abruptly. He didn't.
Oh, so he already retired.
He's not retiring at the end of the season. He already retired.
Really?
Yeah, the Yankees radio announcer. He's an older guy. It is. Most people used to not even be alive when they were his age, let alone work. So it is a lot to do all of that. Look, I know he doesn't travel with the team anymore. But even so, it is a lot to do to call 162 games on the radio, even if you're not traveling with the team. I don't know if it was a health concern or not. It likely was, but I don't know if that's true. I think he just lost the love for it because it was just so hard on him. But, you know, I think people are going to miss John Sterling a lot. People often criticize him for being a bad announcer. I think the whole bad announcer thing with a lot of announcers is very overplayed because you're just used to hearing the same people over and over again, that it's easy to get sick of them. I don't think Joe Buck is such a bad announcer. We just hear him all the time, and it's easy to kind of say he's a bad
also, John Sterling had a lot of calls where Giancarlo Stanton hit a single in the Yankees wild card game against the Red Sox, and John Sterling had the ball landing in Dorchester. Like, if you remember that.
Yes.
And Stanton was like at first, and Sterling was still saying it was gone. He had a couple of them. I just read somewhere here that this is insanity, between 1989 and 2019, he called 5,060 consecutive Yankee games.
That's crazy. Wow. So good for him.
I mean, good for him. But yeah, I also think like the era of sort of people listening to a lot of stuff on the radio is kind of dying as well.
Yeah. But I think there'll always be, I agree with that. Although I think there'll always be a mark. Now, I'm personally not a fan of listening to games on the radio, but because I'm a visual person. The reason I enjoy sports is because of the visual aspect of it. And I don't know what it would be like if I was in my grandfather's generation and every baseball game I had to listen to on the radio because I didn't get them on TV. That just sounds horrible to me. I don't even know if I would have been a sports fan if I had grown up in that time. But I think there'll always be some type of market for it because people will be driving and will want, I mean, not as much as before, but as long as people are driving and have radios in their cars, they will be driving during games and will want to listen to it. To me, it just, there'll always be some market for it. People say radio's dying, and it kind of is on some level, but it's still there. Like, it's not blockbuster. Like, it's still there, and there's still some market for it. So I don't know. All right. So I just want thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next week. Like I said before, you can follow us on social media at ETB Network on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find us find this network on youtube.com/ETB Network and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Peace.